What's going on? Welcome back to Fanatic Journey. So today when I talk to you on Lucid, I want to go over some of the current data points, talking on what just came out about the company and which could mean a very kick-ass upcoming earnings. And then over and above that, just where things might be going from here. Before I get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So Lucid did pull down a 7.52%. And for those of you that have been watching my channel, I've been warning this, that if CPI was going to be negative, you were going to see a very swift, broader market pullback. And that's kind of what happened. I'm going to play a video near the tail end talking on, or I guess coming from an analyst viewpoint, on how today's sell-off was somewhat unjustified. But then again, if you do look at the true data points, like both on a year over year and a month over month, it did increase and was higher than the forecast. And even if you do look at the true data points right here, so this shows all the January numbers, and it does show that the energy component or the basket did go down 0.9, meaning the other basket items went up. So this data technically isn't the best. So once again, that's something to consider. But like I said, that video I'm going to play kind of talks on how the feds were anticipating this negativity coming from the CPI. And hopefully the next months and going forward, that is where you are going to see more of a reduction in that. So again, we just kind of have to wait and see. There has been no official news from Lucid, no SEC filings, but there was one thing that did come out that I wanted to share with you. And so Let's Go Lucid did retweet this and ultimately does say that AMP2 is forecasting between 5,000 to 10,000 vehicles being produced in 2024. So not only is that ahead of the game, but basically that's more than that they produced as a whole in 2023. So as I've said in the past, like this upcoming earnings, yeah, earnings per share, revenue are going to be key attributes, but in reality, what 2024 either make it or break it for earnings is future guidance. That's been happening across the board. So even if a company has amazing numbers, if they give bad guidance for 2024, they sell off. So in reality, I do feel like this might be a very positive catalyst for Lucid. And so technically, if you kind of factored it all in, like we could realistically see 25,000 plus for their target for 2024, because obviously if AMP2 is producing between 5,000 to 10,000, AMP1 isn't just going to sit there with their thumb up their ass, right? They're going to actually be doing something. And if they produced 8,000, you kind of have to piece it together that realistically they could double that. And if you kind of factor in AMP2, then yeah, definitely they could have more than 25,000. And as I've said, if it is less than 25, market's going to take that whole earnings as negative. If it's positive and higher than 25,000, then definitely I feel like the market's going to take that upcoming earnings as very positive. So again, I see this as a very, very positive thing for Lucid. But moving on though, talking on some data points, more so with shorts. Shorts didn't do anything today. So they increased roughly about 47,000 shares. So that's kind of a drop in the bucket. 30.26% of the free float is being shorted. 267.84 million shares overall are being shorted. And cost to borrow average is 29.73. So I was very much wrong. I did say that if CPI was going to be negative, you are going to see shorts jump all over Lucid. They did jump all over growth stocks, like a lot of stocks that I do look at frequently. Shorts doubled down today, but not so much with Lucid. So as I said with my video yesterday, legitimately, I do feel like Lucid is poised to go up, and clearly shorts do acknowledge that. So that's how I interpret all of this information. There wasn't really any changes to analyst ratings, nor anything coming from the data points from ratings or anything like that. So it has just been rather quiet. So the last rating did come in 22 days ago, but with their upcoming earnings right around the corner, anticipate all of these, everyone and their dog, to give ratings on Lucid. And hopefully it'll be a little bit higher than the consensus of $5 within that range. Moving on though, looking at options. So $1.22 million in calls being purchased versus 4.16 million in puts. 45% of all the options being done so far were neutral, and that's based on right down here. So a lot of people are just taking advantage of the volatility in Lucid and just trying to get some premiums. And as I've said time and time again, highly suggest in selling puts, selling calls, and whatever else, because that way is very advantageous. You can kind of look at the technicals, see where it's going to be trading, and you get free money, right? That's my own opinion. Of course, you guys do your own due diligence at the end of the day. But of the call options that are being purchased, you do see a consensus for it to be above roughly around $4, and looking at puts, more so below $3. So similar to yesterday, if anything, because CPI, more puts are being purchased. But aside from that, though, it is what it is. I think that was kind of anticipated. These are some of the transactions that did occur on the secondary market above $100,000 today. So big money definitely was looking at Lucid. So of course, generally that's a good thing. Actually, one thing I didn't really bring up is the volume. So 27.1 million shares were traded, 44.9 is the average today. So a little bit lower for volume. And based on this, the fact that you do see a lot more transactions, that does insinuate that there was a lot more long investors getting in today. So once again, that might be a positive thing for their upcoming earnings, because it doesn't logically make sense for an institution who thinks that their upcoming earnings is going to be a fail to really get in at this stage, if that makes sense. I don't know. But right now, looking here, with it closing at $3.32, it did unfortunately close below this pivot point of $3.40. And it did actually take Lucid quite a lot of momentum to actually get above this pivot point. So it does suck the fact that CPI did knock it down. But based on what I did mention yesterday, the technicals are kind of overbought. So in reality, a pullback like this is good for consolidation purposes and the long-term health of the technicals and whatever else. So right now, going into tomorrow, you'll want to watch it to either make or break, get above this $3.40 range. And then dependent on that, you'll kind of just look at the support and resistance points. So just take a mental image of a lot of these. But like I mentioned at the very beginning, I just want to quickly play 1 minute of this video, because this does come from an analyst viewpoint on CPI and why today's sell-off was somewhat unjustified, and the Feds already kind of were anticipating this. So I can feel like a lot of people might get a lot of good information out of this.
This morning's inflation print raising some fresh questions for the Fed, and of course the timeline of potential rate cuts ahead. We want to bring in our Steve Leisman with his take on the print, having had a couple hours here, Steve, to dig through some of the internals.
Yeah, and Carl, I don't think the Fed is going to be as freaked out about this number as perhaps the market is. If you look back, we pulled a quote from Susan Collins last week, and she just used the word bumpy the way a whole bunch of other folks use the word.
I've watched this video a couple times, and I swear this guy is not gonna, he doesn't say that. I think he's gonna, like, the way he speaks, it looks like he's going to say fucking, but pardon my French on the side. No, but that kind of drives me crazy. I'm just going to quickly go back here just so you guys can get some comic out of this.
The way a whole bunch of other folks use the word bumpy. She just says, look, this is, we think it's going to come down. I expect the inflation slowdown will happen, but the timing is difficult to predict and the road may well be bumpy. This is what the Fed expected. I think what I see this morning is the market coming closer to the Fed. I don't think also, Carl, it's time to write off the idea that inflation is going to be slowing from here. There's a lot of January effects in here. The problem is I can't be proved right about this for another month or two.
Do you think the OER number is suspicious?
Not suspicious. It's just the way it's calculated. But you know, you hear the same things. You and Sarah both hear the same things that I hear, that all the market-based numbers show this thing coming down. It's not going to translate into the PCE. I will say, though, don't rest your hopes on that February 29th PCE number, because what I'm hearing is that some of what we're seeing in the CPI will spill over into what's expected to be a still elevated and maybe a little bit hot PCE number. But you know what's happened now, Carl? Remember the number that nobody ever paid attention to, the distant cousin, or the one nobody really liked? That PPI number on Friday now becomes the most important number out there because of the way that feeds into the PCE. And you.
So yeah, PPI coming out this upcoming Friday, the uncle that nobody seems to like or whatever is kind of, I like this guy. I don't know really who he is, but aside from that though, I do agree that the Feds did anticipate this, especially you can tell based on Powell's his last speech from I think 2 weeks ago, something like that. So ultimately, retail sales coming out on Thursday and then PPI on Friday. So I do feel that there's still going to be a lot of good momentum in the broader market. Despite higher inflation numbers coming out this round, companies are still having some fairly good earnings. So it's not really affecting it it as much as like to justify a 7% down day. My own thoughts, of course. Let me know your thoughts. Give yourself a shout out. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing with Lucid? One final thing, as I always do, take advantage of this promo. Simply sign up for an account with Moo, throw $100 at it, and you get 5 free stocks. Each stock is valued up to $2,000. Take advantage of this. Link in the description below and also the comments. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.